Good afternoon. The last time I talked to you, we were considering the possibility of Joel and his friends and family returning to the scene of the crime, going back to the cabin in the woods. Today, where I am, I can't imagine July the 1st, which is the date that they're going back to the cabin in the woods. What I mean by that is this morning when I went for my walk, it was darn cold. Well, cold. It was 3 below and there was quite a wind. And it's quite a contrast with the weather they're facing on July the 1st when they go back to the cabin. I'm going to read you some of what went on there and we'll talk about it a little bit. Going back to that cabin, according to Joel and Jay, was something that was important for them to do so that they wouldn't feel so terrible when they thought of it. Remember, they discovered the body there. They want to have happy memories of that place, not terrifying memories. So they've planned a picnic. Here's some of what is going on. It was a beautiful morning with only the odd fluffy cloud in the sky. A great day to celebrate Canada's holiday. The families have been looking forward to this afternoon's picnic. Most preparations had been completed yesterday. Some things had even been loaded into the cars last night. The perishables would be left in the icebox until they were ready to leave home. Now, I don't know whether you remember much about iceboxes. I do. The house I grew up in our back porch, we had an icebox. It wasn't a refrigerator. We eventually got a refrigerator, but I can remember the iceman coming and plunking that big block of ice in the icebox. And since this is 1928, they definitely aren't using refrigerators. Not these families. They're using their ice boxes. Now, Sylvia Grayson's family, Sylvia was Jay's friend, lived in a 2-story house on a large half-acre lot on the edge of town. There was lots of room for parking, so everyone planned to meet there. This was an event that everyone was looking forward to. When they received permission to have this picnic, and when I say they received permission, I mean the parents were as excited as the kids were to go on this picnic. But they had to get the permission of the the chief of police, and also of the owner of the property, who lived in Ottawa. Now, Sylvia's mom, Clara, was a kind person, so she had organized things, and things were well organized. All 4 cars were at the Grayson home, loaded up and ready to go by 1:45. This is a Sunday, so of course they'd all gone to church in those days. There were a total of 19 people heading to the picnic. Everyone had kept their word to the chief of police. No one had talked to anyone else about it. It wasn't going to be widely broadcast. There wouldn't be a crowd going there. The site would still be relatively secure. As the 4 cars headed out towards Goshawk, they made a conspicuous caravan. There's the map, and I think you can see, maybe better than I can, because it's very small on my screen. They've left Chaseford. They've gone out the highway a little bit. They turned and then headed to Goshawk. And once they get to Goshawk, they'll go down the right county road to get to that bush and get to the cabin. So they were on their way. Now, it was a caravan, and this was supposed to be a surprise. Or I shouldn't say a surprise, it was supposed to be a secret trip. Well, in the country, to see 3 vehicles headed down a country road, one behind the other, that would certainly draw interest. So they were a little concerned about that, because they'd given their word to the chief that they wouldn't draw a crowd of other people. So anyway, they made their way down, and they finally arrived on that side road across the other side of the bush from where the farm had been, where they had originally hunted for the cabin in the bush. So now they're a couple of side roads over, but they've got an easy way into the cabin. There's a nice lane there. Well, they had parked the cars. The smaller kids got out of the cars, and of course they started jumping around all over the place, happy to be out of the car. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon. They're going on a picnic. They're excited as all get out. They're hopping around. Well, it's only a 20-minute walk, Joel's dad said. We're lucky it's such a beautiful day. We'll enjoy everything we do today when we get to the picnic site. So let's have some fun. Let's carry everything now. Doesn't sound like fun, but they had to get the things there. And then everyone chuckled at that comment. And then Jay's dad said, well, we're certainly lucky we have teenagers with us. They're so strong and they're so energetic. Well, I think the 4 teenagers kind of went, oh, no, because they knew who was going to be carrying all the things to the picnic area. So they headed down the lane and walked their 20 minutes and got to the picnic area. So when they arrived at the clearing in front of the cabin, everyone was surprised, especially Jay and Joel, because the area was, the wide open area was much bigger than they remembered. So already that was a slight change to their memory, and probably a positive one. It wasn't claustrophobic at all. The trees were not looming around them. And Joel's younger brother, Ralph, who's loved to play baseball, said, I'm ever glad I brought my ball glove and a bat and a ball. We can have a game. Let me think. Did you ever play baseball at a family picnic on a Sunday afternoon? I did. I usually had a good time. The one time that I didn't particularly enjoy was when I accidentally hit my younger cousin in the head with the bat. It's okay. He recovered, and he still speaks to me. So these guys were excited. They were ready to have a game of baseball. So Ralph, who's so keen on the sport, he starts hunting around for bases and things. You know, he's going to lay out the field and where they can sort of put the first base line and the third base line and get ready to play the game. Because it was a couple of hours till they were going to eat anyway, right? So we might as well have some fun. Within 10 minutes, the game was underway. There were 9 playing scrub. I don't know whether you played scrub or not. I know I did. There were 3 at bat and 6 in the field. Emmy Lou, at 8 years old, was up first, and they agreed ahead of time that nobody could strike out. You were at bat until you hit the ball, right? So she wasn't too bad, and eventually she got a hit, and she got on base, and the game was on the way. They'd been playing for about 15 minutes when Jay hit a foul ball down the third base line into a small thicket of young trees. Ralph raced over, tracked the ball down, and tossed it back to the pitcher. And then he said very loudly, time out, time out. We need to stop the game for a minute. There's an empty wine bottle here in the thicket. Don't touch it. The others hollered, the parents. It's okay. It's okay. We don't mean to scare you, Ralph, but you may have found some evidence. So here we are. New evidence is found at the murder scene because they've been given permission to go and have a ball game there to celebrate Canada's birthday. I have an empty bag I brought with me, said Georgie's dad, let's put it in that bag. That way no one will get the fingerprints on it. It'll still be fine. So very carefully they put it in the bag. And then there was a bit of an argument. But the chief said, if we find anything here, we should leave it where it is. Well, okay, they agreed to do that, and they were going to tie something colorful to the bushes in that little thicket, so it would be easy to find the bottle when the chief and Detective O'Neill came to look for it. But that put a damper on the game, because all of a sudden, they've been having a great time. It had been July the 1st. It had been a holiday. They were going to have their meals shortly, and then all of a sudden they found this bottle. Now, usually if you'd found a bottle, you wouldn't think much about it. You'd say some guy was here drinking the other day. But in this case, because there had been a murder in the cabin and the bottle was found nearby, suddenly came the cloud of the murder again. So that kind of put a damper on the game. So the only one who wanted to keep playing was Ralph. So Sylvia's dad agreed to hit him some fly balls to keep him happy. Well, mealtime was still a good 10 or 15 minutes away. So Joel said to himself, he's going to try and sneak away, get into the nearby bush. Remember, he now can contact essences. He's thinking if he gets in there, he'll be able to make contact with the murdered woman, Louise, right? Maybe he can make contact with Louise Carter. So he heads into the bush, and he doesn't have any success. And finally, Jay sees him in there and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And Joel thinks quickly and says, "Oh, I'm on a nature walk." That's a polite way to say something else. Anyway, there was no success that afternoon, although they did find a clue, perhaps. We'll have to find out. So the picnic ends, they go home, and later that evening, Joel is sitting up in his attic bedroom, thinking about what went on during the day, and wondering about things. He had expected some kind of contact or signal from Louise Carter. But even though she was murdered, and even though there's an essence, he's new at this game. So maybe he was going to have difficulty contacting her. So he thought about Walter, because he thought perhaps Walter would be able to make a connection. So he put down the book he was reading. It was an Agatha Christie mystery. And he contacted Walter. He thought about him, concentrated, and contacted him. Walter's first question was, "What did you learn from Louise today?" Oh, of course. Joel's thinking, "That's why I contacted you. I want to find it." Then Walter continued and said, "I just received a message from her. She was unable to make contact with you today. She said she almost made a connection when you were in the cabin, but when she learned that someone had found the wine bottle, it disturbed her, and she didn't continue with that connection." Well, why would finding the wine bottle upset her so much was the message that Joel sent back to Walter. And Walter said, "Louise thinks the bottle contained an excellent wine to which poison had been added. Louise has expensive tastes in wine. She always purchased wine with the Krug label, K-R-U-G. When she arrived at the cabin that Saturday evening in May, the day she was murdered, she found a slightly chilled bottle with the label Crude Collection 1928 sitting on the table. There was no card with the bottle. She assumed it was a thank you gift from someone, one of her Chaseford friends, most likely Alice Chalmers. So she poured a glass of wine and too late realized she'd been poisoned. She will try and contact you again, Joel. She's really pleased you found the bottle. Well, I'm going to leave the story there today because you know that the chief of police will want to do some work with that bottle to look for fingerprints. Even the type of wine that it is might be helpful to them. So until next time, we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.